Okay. And I'm not going to have to take attendance because basically if I don't have a test mark, that means you weren't here. So um, that we can save a little bit of time. This class starts at 8:35. Okay. So it's a good idea to be here right on time. Okay. Um, Okay, so what I want you to do is just to get a piece of paper. And so the way it's going to work is this. It's 10 questions. Just make sure to mute your sound. It'll be 10 questions. And then two bonus questions. So essentially the last few, the first 5 questions are just basically general questions, based on what we've discussed. And then the last few questions are essentially going to the Consumer Price Index website, just doing exactly what we did. Okay, so essentially, if you can go through all of those steps, you will get the 10 points and the 2 bonus points. Shouldn't be a problem. So I'm gonna read the questions. I'll give you a couple of minutes, a minute or so for the first few steps, and then I'll give you a little bit of time for the data related steps. Okay. And then we will mark them in class, and then you will email your result, just what you got out of 10. So if you got 12 out of 10, great. If you got 11 or 10 out of 10, great. So you email the results to myself at my Gmail account and to Claire, and then we will record the marks. Okay. All right. Kyle, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so you got those instructions, okay?
Yes.
Okay. See, this is the beauty of doing everything on Zoom, despite the fact that we meet in person, folks, okay? Because it gives us a lot of flexibility. All right. Marissa, are you there?
Yeah. Right.
Okay, good.
I didn't catch the beginning of the instruction. David, would you be able to it wasn't loading the Zoom. Sorry.
Okay, so the quiz will be out of 10. There will be 2 bonus marks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions, and you are just going to provide the answer. The last few questions are essentially asking you to repeat the data steps that we executed last week, which was logging on to the StatCan Consumer Price Index, telling me what the rate was, what the index, what the rate was for, what the yearly rate was for July 2023. Same thing, right? You just go through the same steps. And at the end of the process, we will do the marking in class, and then you will just email the results of your test. So just, and in the subject line, just put test result so that we know. So put test result in the subject line, and you email the results to myself at my Gmail account and to Claire, and then we will record the marks. Okay. All right. So
Thank you.
No worries. Kyle and Marissa, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, terrific. Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Okay, question number 1. Who sets the inflation rate? The federal government, the Bank of Canada, or international markets? Who sets the inflation rate? The federal government, the Bank of Canada, or international markets? Number 2. What federal agency compiles statistics on a wide range of topics? What federal agency compiles statistics on a wide range of topics. Number 3, give me 2 examples of commodities that are affected by inflation. 2 examples. Okay, number 4, I want you to go to the Consumer Price Index app, okay, which was on week 1. Remember, it's this one right here, the interactive app. So I want you to go to this app, which looks like this. Okay, I'll give you what, 45 seconds or so just to get the app. And I will share my screen so Tyler and Marissa can see this. Okay, Tyler and Marissa, so what I asked is to go back to week 1, and you remember the Consumer Price Index app, interactive app that you see right here. So click on that. It'll take you to the website. Just both of you, just give me a thumbs up when you're actually here, what you see on the screen. Okay, Marissa, you're there. Tyler? Kyle, sorry. Okay, so the next step for those of you who are already there, I want you to download, okay, there are tables. There are a bunch of tables, right, that are being used to drive this visualization, okay? So I want you to find the first table, basically, the Consumer Price Index monthly, not seasonally adjusted, and download it. So find the first table and download it. I'm not going to show you where it is, but if you remember what we did last week, and try to keep your eyes on your own screen, please. As a hint, it's right above the actual visualization. Oh, I'll walk you through that. Yeah, that's what you have to do. Yeah. Hey, Kyle, are you on the page?
Yes, sorry, the reaction went away, but yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. All right. So once you have that table, now I want you to download it. Be sure to put it in a folder that's properly named, that you can find right away. So this is my subfolder that I've put the CSV file into. Okay. So Oops, no, I led you astray. Hang on. So, okay, so you're here, right? Open the table and just, so your screen should look like this, okay? And don't do anything yet. Don't download it yet. I'm sorry. I rushed ahead of myself. So your screen should just look like this. Okay? Everyone, you're all okay? Kyle and Marissa, your screen looks like this. Okay, good. Marissa? Good, good, good. Okay. Now, this is where the fun begins. Okay, so use your add and remove data tab to obtain another table, like a second table that gives us the ability to choose geography, products and product groups, and reference period. I'm going to stop right here because you're going to do the rest. Okay, so once you're here, what tab do we click, right, to give us more options to choose data that we want to download? Okay, and then once you're there, okay, so we're at number 7, select all the geographies. Select under products and product groups. There are 15 pre-selected products. Okay. If you wish, as we did last week, you can select a few others if you want. The reason I'm giving you this option is because if you choose to use this table for your story, you may decide, your little group might decide to choose, say, rent or one of the subcategories to dig into. So this just kind of walks you through how to do that. Well, it defaults to 15, right? So the 15 basic ones. And then in addition to that, like if you click on all of the plus signs, they're all the sub menus, and there might be others that you want, like a 2 or 3 others that you want. So then you can select those as well. Marissa, you had a question in the chat. Did you say download the table or the graph? So are you
Sorry.
okay?
Yeah, that was from before. All good now. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Okay, so now I want you to move on to the reference period tab. And as we did last week, I want you to, your period is July 2019 to July 2023. And again, we did that because we wanted to compare pre-pandemic to the most recent period this year. Yes. So your reference period, I want you to, it defaults to 5 months, right? Well, we want to go way back to before the pandemic. So your start date should be July 2019. Yes. The products and product groups, right? So it defaults to 15, right? The basic ones. So you can stick with that. But if you wish, you can choose a couple of others that you want, right? But if you want to stick with the 15, then that's fine. So before we proceed to the next step, you should have all of the geographies, not just Canada, but all of the geographies. You should have, at the very least, just the 15 pre-selected groups and a couple of additional ones if you wish. And then the time period should be from starting date July 2019 to July 2023. Okay. Now, once you've got that, now apply. Hit the apply tab so that it kicks in if you haven't done so already, and then download it. And the downloading, this is probably one of the most important parts. Make sure that you use the proper download selection from the drop-down menu. And then make sure that you put it somewhere on your hard drive. Okay. But the actual CSV file, because it will have a CSV extension, which stands for comma separated value, which is basically a text file that you can open up in Excel or Google Sheets. Rename it, but keep the table number. Keep the table number, so it'll have the table number, and then it'll have like database downloading or something like that, right? You don't want the generic database downloading, so delete that and just give it a new label, underscore, and then the table number in your, right? Table number is important because once you have the table number, you can pop that into a browser and it'll take you right to the table. Okay, so it's like an ID, it's like an identification number. Okay, number 10. Open up the CSV file if you haven't done so already and save it as an Excel. So open it up and resave it as an Excel file. Because now what I ask you to do next for the next 2 steps, you're going to be doing in the Excel file, not the CSV file. Okay, so number 11, this is your bonus question. Filter the reference date, which is column A, for July 2019 and July 2023. So filter that column just for those 2 dates. Pardon me? What was the last date? July. Yeah. So the first is July 2019. So the start date and the end date, basically. 2 dates, start date and the end date. In your geography column, just give me Canada. So deselect everything and just select Canada. Deselect, so you deselect the provinces, just select Canada. And for the products and product groups column, select all items. So deselect click the select all, which will deselect everything and just click on the one that you want, which in this case is all items. And the last step, I want you to sort the two dates in the reference date column in descending order. So July 2023 should be on top and July 2019 should be on the bottom. Marissa.
Which part of that like was the bonus question? Or like was it like
The bonus question is the filtering. Like once you have the table in the Excel file that you save from the CSV file, then the first bonus question is to filter by reference date, filter for July 2019, July 2023, filter the geography column, the geo column for Canada, and the products and product groups for all items.
okay,
So that's
perfect.
the first bonus question. Second bonus question is now sort the two dates in the reference date column in descending order. What's that? Yes. Descending means the most recent. Yeah. Yeah. Question 4, certainly. Go to the Consumer Price Index app and tell me what the inflation rate was.
Sorry,
Number 2. What federal agency compiles statistics on a wide range of topics? The answer should be obvious now that you've completed the rest of it. Yes. Okay, number 4 is, now you've already got the app up, so just go to the app and tell me what the inflation rate was for July 2023 for all items. Yeah. This just gets you used to navigating the app, that's all. That's the main thing. Are we all good? Does anyone need me to repeat anything? Any question? The last step was sorting the date column in descending order, which was the most recent date first. That was the last one. Yeah. Yes. Pardon me? Pardon me? Which question? You want me to repeat all the questions? Okay, so after 4, it was just all the steps. Yeah. Ask away if you have any questions. Okay, we're all good? You're not supposed to write anything down for the rest. It's just that you completed those steps. That's all.
You only wrote down anything from 1.
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah, so obviously for 1, inflation rate, 2, 8 federal agency, 2 examples of commodities, and then everything else it's just the steps that you go through. Okay. Sorry, I didn't make that more clear. All right, so let's do the answers. Okay. Who sets the inflation rate? Yeah. What federal agency compiles statistics in a wide range of topics? StatsCan, yeah. Give me 2 examples of commodities affected by inflation. Food and housing. Yeah, easy one. Okay, so the rest are basically if you've completed the steps, you've got them, right? So just go through and make sure that you've completed the steps. So here is the so you start with, oh yeah, I forgot the 4th question, which is you go to the app and it defaults to all items. And how do I know what the inflation rate was? I just the end there and it's 3.3 for all items. Okay. How do I know and how can I select others? I can just go here and I can select these, right? I can select by geography. Right? So if you want to use this for your assignment, you can start here and just sort of play around and see, what you want. And then if you want to go to the tables, you go to the data here. So we'll be looking at the labor force survey, and it's the same thing. The app, you see the data, you click on the data tab and you see all the data sets that drive the visualization. We choose the first one, which is the consumer price index, monthly, not seasonally adjusted. Okay, which takes you here, and you're at this tab here, and then you just go through the steps. Okay, so you go to add, remove. Okay, and then what does this plus sign mean? There's more options, and there they are, right? And so for all of these options, now what I would do is I would just select all of them, right? Because you might want to, say for Ontario, you might want to compare Ottawa and Toronto, for example, okay? Whether it's consumer price index, whether it's labor force unemployment, okay? That might be a really cool visualization, like a simple bar chart that you can do for your story, okay? So you want to select, and it's only 30. So your product and product groups, remember, it defaults to 15. So those 15 are the ones that we discussed, food and gas, and right. But if you click on the little plus sign here under each one, under food, right? So you might want, I don't know, one of these selections here, or shelter, which I suspect a number of you might want to do for stories. You might only want rental accommodation, right? So you can select that. But if you don't, then the table that you download will only have shelter. It won't have a further breakdown. Okay. So once you've done that, then you can go to the next tab, and the reference period. Remember, any StatCan table, the reference period is 5 months, right? But you can go back as far as you want. I've suggested July 2019, just because it's before the pandemic. It gives us a bit of a benchmark. Okay. But if you wanted, if you wanted to do like a like a line graph, you could do like each July 2019, July 2020, July 2021, 2022, 2023, and you can see how it behaves. Okay. So then you'd get a line graph that looks like this. That's what you would get. Okay, that could be your visualization in Data Wrapper. Okay. All right. So once you've got that, okay, so you always go back and just check. So I've selected all my 30 items, my products and product groups. I just went with my 15, but I'm going to select, I'm kind of partial to rent. So under shelter, I'm going to also select the rent subcategory. So now I've got 16. Okay. And then the reference period, right, is July 2019 to July 2023. And now I'm going to apply. And then I go to download options. So which option do I choose? Yes. Okay, that one. And once you choose that, then you'll get it into, you get the CSV file into your, the CSV file is this one right here. Oops. Okay, and you see that I've renamed it. Okay, so I've kept the actual table number, but I've renamed it CPI Index July 2019, July 2023. And then when I open it up, I save it. I save it as an Excel. Why do I do that? Very important. Why do I do that? Maybe that should have been the bonus question. I do that because How many worksheets does Excel support? How many worksheets? Many, multiple. A CSV file selects one. Right? So I was doing all kinds of work the other day, created all these pivot tables and successive worksheets. I saved the file. I forgot to save it as an Excel file. So the work that I'd done for pretty close to an hour was gone. Right? So here I am, I teach this stuff, I've written about it, and I make the same mistake. Okay, so you always want to save it as. The difference between a CSV file, which is comma separated value, is like one sheet of paper compared to a book, right? So files are, and a lot of files that you'll get on open data sites are in CSV format. So that once you download them, save them as Excel, and that way you can create successive worksheets in an Excel workbook. Okay, so that's why. So you save it as Excel, right? And then once you go to the bonus, and then this is what I did, right? So let me just sort that in descending order, right? So July 2023, July 2019, just for Canada. Okay, so you can see that I've deselected everything and I just selected July 2019, and I just selected July 2023. For my geography, I deselected all of the jurisdictions, the provinces, and some cities, and I just selected Canada, right? And for the items, I deselected everything and just selected all items. Okay, so give yourself a mark out of 10. So if you got the two bonus questions, you will have earned 12 out of 10. If you got anything less than that, then say 10, then it's 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so the inflation rate, the number one. Okay, who sets the inflation rate? Number two, the federal agency. Two examples of commodities. So that's just one. That's one answer. That's three. Go to the consumer price index and tell me what the inflation rate was for July 2023. That's four. And then, okay, so for downloading the consumer price index, so basically you get a point for everything else, because you can't like if you didn't download the table, then you can't do the rest of the steps. So just give yourself a mark and email, put test result in the subject line and email the result to myself and Claire. All of the questions? Who sets the inflation rate? The federal government, the Bank of Canada, or international markets? 2, what federal agency compiles statistics on a wide range of topics? Number 3, give me 2 examples of commodities affected by inflation. And number 4, go to the Consumer Price Index app and tell me what the inflation rate was for July 2023 for all items. And this is compared to the year before, the same period the year before. And just email your results to us and we're good to go. Yes. The first bonus question is you have to filter. So the first bonus question is basically this, what you see on the screen. Okay. And then the second bonus question is you're sorting the date in descending order. I just highlighted here with a yellow. Okay, any other questions? Yes. What's that?
Did you put Because when I.
How did I sort?
Yeah, how do you sort both, like, at the same time?
So what you do to sort is you just click the first cell underneath the title, okay? And then you go to your data and then your sort button here, Z to A.
But then how do you sort, like, one, and then how do you make the second column correspond to the other?
Okay, so in Excel, that's a good question. In Excel, once I sort, okay, every row is a record, right? So once I sort the dates, then everything else in that row goes with it, sorts with it. Okay? Does everyone understand that? That was a very good question. Okay? So one row, right? So you sort one column in a row, right? And it moves the entire row. Okay? So why do we sort? What do we sort? Why do we sort things in ascending or descending order? Yeah, to see what was the most recent. Okay? Or, what was the most, or what was the least, or what were the top 10. Okay, that's why we sort things. Right? We just don't think about storytelling that way, but a lot of the stories we tell are based on sorting things. Who made the most, who made the least, which party is up in the polls, ahead in the polls, right? All you're doing is that's basically a data-driven story, and it's just sorting from highest to lowest or lowest to highest. Okay. All right. So has everyone sent their results to myself and Claire? How did you guys find that? It was okay? So that's what Kyle.
Did you want us to attach anything in the results email?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I take your word for it. You're all honest people. Okay. So let's continue. There are no other questions. We're all good. Okay. So let's save that. All right. Okay. So so let's just continue here. You can ignore the first link here because I thought I was having a lot of problems with the StatCan website. It was really slow last night. So just in case we ran into problems, I uploaded the CSV file to the syllabus, and you would have been able to download it if we couldn't, for whatever strange reason, download the material from StatCan. Marissa.
I just had a question about like downloading Excel because I had never done it on my Mac, like with like this like Microsoft 365. Sorry. Do we is using the internet browser version fine, or like should I download the desktop app? Okay. Do you know how to do that from? I don't know if my Mac's being weird, but it's like no, I'm logged into Microsoft 365 and I've been trying to do this for a few days and it won't let me download Excel.
Yeah, you should just be able to order it using your student number.
Okay.
You should, and if you don't know how to do that, who would they talk to? Okay. If you're still stuck, just contact Claire and she can.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. That's all right. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to show you something really cool, and the reason I'm sort of deviating is because I want you to start thinking about data. Like there's data for almost every story that we do. It's driven by data element. So one of the things that you should be asking yourself is, geez, where can I get data on that? Or who keeps the data? Who's responsible for keeping that data, right? So for example, there was a horrific story about E. coli outbreaks in daycares in Alberta, right? So if there was a similar situation in Ottawa, who would be responsible? Like there would be data, right? But who would be responsible for collecting that data? So public health is the responsibility of the municipal government. Okay, so it would be municipal inspectors would be responsible for going into daycare centers or restaurants or whatever and conducting safety inspections. Right. And that information, you know, if you wanted to get the track record of a particular daycare to find out if it has been an offender, or a particular restaurant to find out that it has been an offender, you can actually go on the Ottawa Open Data website, get that information and download it. Okay, so always be asking your question, geez, when something like that happens, when there's an outbreak or something, who's responsible for collecting the data and where can I get it? And at least if you just if you get used to asking yourself those two questions, you're off to the races. Okay. So there was this article here, and I don't know if you folks have seen it, but a secret UFO memo sent to Canadian PM Justin Trudeau. So you may remember that I think it was earlier this year, there were balloons that were shot down over the Yukon and in the United States. And we thought that it was China spying on us, right? And we thought that maybe, like, who knows, right? So they were shot down. So, you know, this leads to the question, okay, so when there are unidentified objects or objects in the sky that have the potential to cause some sort of aerial disruption, like who records that, and where does that data end up? Okay. And the answer to that question is this something called the Civil Aviation Daily Occurrence Reporting System. Okay, so the way air navigation works in Canada, and to really, this is just, you know, if you want to work as a journalist, you have to geek out on process, right? You got to figure out, okay, which agency is responsible for what, and then do they collect data on this thing? So the agency responsible for collecting aerial safety information is NAV Canada, right? So if there are planes that fly too close together, or if there's an emergency landing at the Ottawa airport, okay, NAV Canada collects that, right? So what does an air navigator do? I'm sure many of you have flown on planes, right? So when you land or take off, right, the air navigators basically give the pilots the clearance to take off or land, right? Or tell them, oh, you're flying too close to another plane. Okay, so that is the air navigation system. So whenever there is an occurrence, okay, that is recorded in a database, which is maintained by Transport Canada, because Transport Canada is ultimately responsible for air safety, air, rail, and road safety. Okay, so this information is kept in something called a Civil Aviation Daily Occurrence Reporting System. Okay, and then you can read about it here. And then if you go to the Cador's search engine here, so just click on this Cador's main menu, okay, and go to Query. Go to the Query tab. So a query means what? Like whenever you see a website like this and you see a query option, what does that allow you to do? Yes and no. That's what query means, but basically a question will be like an FAQ, like a facts and questions, right? But a query more often than not means that if you click on it, it will allow you to do a search, like do a search, because now what government agencies do, and this is information that is available on open data websites, is that the data is on the government server. In this case, it's on the Transport Canada server. And an interface like this allows you to plug in words and pull information from it. Okay, so that's data, right? And that's the same thing. Like when you plug a search term into Google, it's the same thing. We do it every day, right? It's taking that and it's pulling data and it's presenting it to you in an understandable format, right? So This is these are the tables that when combined form Cadores. So just plug UFO into this narrative, into this occurrence summary bar. Just type UFO and then hit search. Okay, so this is all of the instances where people report seeing UFOs to the Air Navigation Service, which then puts it in the database, right? So the results, there were 49 hits. Okay, 49 hits. And then when you click on the Cadores number, it takes you to the actual table. Okay, so I wanted to see, okay, well, is there, London, Peterborough location, Billy Bishop Airport, but we're in Ottawa, right? So have there been any in Ottawa? So if I scroll down, Kingston is close, but I can maybe get closer. And so there are 3 pages, right? So I'll click on the next page. Burnaby. Do we see anything close to Ottawa? Aha, where? This right here? Okay, so if I click on this, so in CARP, and it was a while ago. Okay, that's fine. Date entered, right? So that means in the database, there's a date field, just like a reference date in the StatCan table. Someone reported an unidentified flying object sighting in CARP and Kinboard, Ontario area. Object was silver, like a balloon, with mechanical grooves. It had 4 blinking lights underneath, 2 in front, 2 behind. It was clear and noticeable. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty wild. Okay. And this stuff is reported, right? So if after that balloon sighting and people thinking, wow, maybe they mistook it from a UFO. If you had known that, oh yeah, so who if you just ask your question, who keeps data about this? Like if someone sees something in the sky and they want to report, who do they report it to? Who keeps this data? Who's responsible for the data? And if you go through those steps, just like the E. coli, when there's an E. coli outbreak at a daycare center or a restaurant, who's responsible for that? Who goes in, who inspects, who keeps the data, right? You would eventually arrive at here. And I don't know about you, but I do a story on this, all of the UFO sightings. And you could, that can be a nice piece for a Capital Current, or quite frankly, you can freelance it. Okay. And it all starts with a simple question. Where is the data for that? Who keeps it? Okay. So I just thought that was a kind of a handy. I was actually thinking of the using the Cadores, showing you the Cadores database in more detail, because then you could do stories about occurrences at the Ottawa airport that were reported. Now, none of this is verified, right? This is just stuff that's reported. Okay. It doesn't mean that obviously doesn't mean that it's true, but it's just reported. Right. And then whenever there's a follow-up, then there would be another field to follow up to say, no, there was nothing to this, or whatever the case may be. Okay. All right. So that's kind of cool. All right. So let's go back to how are we doing for time? Okay. All right. So let's go back and so for your assignment, which we will talk about, for your story assignment, which we will talk about in more detail towards the end of the class. How many are thinking that they want to do inflation? Something on inflation. Okay. And the way the assignments will work, and we'll talk about this towards the end of the class, is that you'll form groups, right? So we're 16 in this class, 16, 17. How many? We're 15? 350. So that'll be, yeah, I think one group will have 3, but most groups will have 2. So think about who you want to pair up with. Right. Then I'm going to show you 2 other data sets before this class is over. My strong suggestion will be to choose one of those 3. If you choose one of those 3, then you do not have to run your story idea by us. Okay. But if you choose another data set that we have not covered in class, then just run it by us just to make sure. But if you choose like inflation or the labor force survey, which I'm going to show you now, or the 311 data, you know, every time that there's a call, there's a complaint, garbage removal or noise or whatever the case may be, you phone the city of Ottawa, and it's all that is logged in a database. If you got bitten by a dog or whatever, that's all logged, right? So I think that between those 3 data sets, that's more than enough for you guys to do a story. But if someone has a burning desire to do something based on a data set that we have not covered, then that's fine. Just run it by us. Clear? Okay. So, okay, labor force survey. Now the labor force survey, if we take a look at the, and I'm using the links from the previous week. Okay, so from week 1. So if we take a look at the scheduled releases, okay, so let me see, oops. So for September, so the next consumer price index is on the 19th. And today is what's today's date? Today's the 13th. Okay, so this gives you the schedules for the releases, okay? All right. Whoops. Okay, so labor force survey. That's a fancy word for what? And this is the app, okay? I'll just pop it in the chat just in case you. Labor force survey is a fancy word for what? What does it measure? Unemployment, right? Every month comes out. What's the unemployment rate? Is it up or down? Has the unemployment rate been going up or down? Well, here is the app, right? So the unemployment rate for August 2023 was 5.5%. Okay. So if we take a look at this chart here, okay, we can see what's happening. What's happening to this curve? Slight increase. Okay. The nice thing about visualizations is that you should be able to look at this and you can see the line. Either the line's going up or it's going down. The bars are going, the bars are getting higher or they're getting smaller. Right. And so in terms of your visualizations, which we'll do a data wrapper next week, that's all you have to do. Right. Give me a line graph, give me a bar graph, keep it real simple, give it a title, a source, and that's it. You're good to go. Okay. So unemployment is going. Now, this is a kind of a cool thing because this is called an interactive dashboard. And so if I click on, say, on Ontario here, it gives me the unemployment rate. It breaks it down by age group. And it also then links to another table that gives me the employment in industrial sectors. Okay. But because we are not, now we could do this if I was teaching you Tableau, but we're using Data Wrapper. So Data Wrapper does not do interactive dashboards. If you want to learn how to use an interactive dashboard, then you can take my investigative course next year. Okay. So how do I get the data that is driving this app, this visualization? Where do I go to get the data? Right here. And then these are the two tables. Okay, so the table, the numbers from the labor force survey are here, unemployment, and then broken down by age group. And then this one, employment by industry, monthly seasonally adjusted, is this table here. Okay, so we're going to download this one here. So click on this one. And then it's going to give us the same interface that we had for the consumer price index. And hopefully your wireless is your wireless also very slow? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. So same thing, right? So typically a stat kit, just like the CPI, the consumer price index, the default is 5 months, right? The geography, the default geography is Canada, but we can see that there are other. The default for sex is both sexes, okay, male, female, although they're going to have to change this for obvious reasons. Okay, so I suspect that StatCan is working on that right now. Okay, but for now, it's male, female. The default age group is 15 and over, but you can see there are other age groups as well. Why is the default 15 and over? Zach? Absolutely, yeah. So 15 and over means that when you're 15, you can legally work. It's not to say that there aren't 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds, of course, right? But as far as the StatCan is concerned, that's when they start recording that, okay? And these statistics, there are an estimate, and we just won't worry about that. And we can see that the default reference period is 5 months. So from April to August, okay? So if you wanted to do a story on unemployment, say for young people, you could do it based on this table, right? Because you're using the latest numbers, which is fine. All right. So now if we want to get beyond these default values, where do we go next? What do we do next? We hit what tab? The add and remove. Okay. And then what does this plus sign means? It means there's more stuff there. So we want to select all. For the labor force characteristics, it selects all 9 characteristics. Okay, so let's just review what they are. Okay, so it breaks down employment by full-time and part-time. Right, so if you wanted to take a look at, young people between the ages of 15 and 24 and part-time, because chances are you have more workers, part-time workers in that age group than other age groups, because people are going to school and whatnot, right? So the fact that you can now break down the employment by full-time and part-time, that allows you to drill down more deeply into the data, so for storytelling. Okay, so you can tell stories about young part-time workers, right? But if it was just unemployment, right, that combined full-time and part-time, then you couldn't do that. Right? Then you have the unemployment rate, the participation rate. So the participation rate just means the percentage of the working population that is actually participating in the workforce. Participation rate. Okay? And then the employment rate. So this is already pre-selected. The 9 of 9 items is already pre-selected. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, so for sex, both sexes are pre-selected. But what if we wanted to do what they've done here? Whoops. What they've done, what they've done here on the interactive app. Okay. What if I wanted to break this down by men and women and then age groups? Okay. Well, I couldn't do this unless with just selecting both sexes, right? So I select all. Okay. So if you just want to filter both sexes, which is everyone, then you can in your analysis, then you just both sexes. But if you wanted to break it down male and female, I would do that. And I would suggest that those who are using this for your stories, I'd break it down by male and female, because then you can compare, you know, young part-time workers, for men and women. All right. And in your geography, you can filter for Ontario, and you can do it for Ontario. Right. So select all, and then age group. Again, so 15 and over is the default. So that covers all workers, but select all. Because again, you know, you might, once you download this, you might want to compare 15 to 24 to say 55 and over, right? Just like they've done here. Okay, you might want to do this. And you might want just to use this as your visualization. Right? And that would be fine. Keep it real simple. Okay. So I would select all age groups, and then the statistics, the estimate, that's fine. Just leave that. And now there you apply. And it takes, has yours loaded already? Yeah, it's really slow. We must be overwhelming the system, you know, like 20 people, boy, working on StatCan. I don't know how they manage. So anyway, once it loads, then you go to your download option, and then you download the CSV file. Okay, rename it. Okay, there we go. Now, there we go. So the estimated number of data points selected is 26,000. What does that mean? Number of data points selected, estimated number. That just means that's the number of rows in your data set. That's the number of records or rows. Okay. Now it gives it to you in this awful interface. So then what you want to do is you want to go to your download options, and you want to choose selected for database downloading. And then you want to put it in, let me see, week 2, labor force survey data. And you can see I've done it already, but I will do it again. But I'm going to rename this, because heaven knows what database loading means. So we'll call this a labor force survey. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I forgot to do something. What did I forget to do? My reference period, right? So I'm going to go back to 2019, August 2019. Now it's going to give me way more data points, right? It's going to go from 26,000 to 261,000, right? And if I apply, look what it's going to do. You have exceeded the maximum 125,000 data points. Don't worry about that. It just means that you've exceeded the maximum that it can display on this interface, but you can still download this. Okay. So let's review what I've done again. Geography, I've selected everything. Labor force characteristics, I just went with the default 9 items. For sex, I selected both sexes and male and female. For age group, I selected all of them. And statistics, that's fine. Data type, oh, I only want seasonally adjusted. So for data type, I only want seasonally adjusted. Why is that? Any idea? What does seasonally adjusted mean? When is the busiest time of the year for the retail industry? When does it make its most money? Christmas, yeah. Construction, when is the busiest time for construction? Busiest time for construction would be summer, right? It's not winter, it's, So if I wanted to compare the unemployment rate for young people working in construction to the unemployment rate for young people working in the retail, I would have to seasonally adjust, right? To take into account the fact that their busy periods are different. So I need to seasonally adjust so that I can compare construction to retail. So you want, when you're doing this, to filter for seasonally adjusted. Now, but even if you forgot and you kept your trend cycle here, all right, you can still filter this out if you downloaded the table. All right. So if I now apply, and the reference period is a few August 2019 to August 2023. Okay, and now I'm going to download it. And then in my title, I'm going to go labor force survey, August 2019 to August 2023, underscore, and there's my table name. And I'm going to save that in the proper folder. To labor force survey, and there we have it. Okay. So this is the point that I'm making about the actual number, table number. So if I just paste the table number into the browser, it'll take me right to it. Okay, so the table number is like an ID. So that's why you want to always keep it in the title of the table. Because if you forget where it is, just plug the table number into the browser. All right, so let's take a break. I'll recording. Okay, you can hear me now? Sorry, guys. What happened was my wireless, did your wireless kick out like temporarily? Anyway, my wireless disconnected, so I had to reconnect. So what I was saying, folks, is that I have added, so I've added this link to the syllabus, so just refresh it. And I just added this story, PM to announce a new housing strategy source. And the point that I was making is that this was the Liberal caucus is meeting in London, Ontario right now, and this was obviously leaked to CTV. But no surprise that there's a new housing strategy because housing is a huge issue. I bring that to your attention because in the consumer price index data that we looked at, rent is probably something where housing costs is something that you might want to look at for, for the younger demographic. So I just point that out again, that here we have yet another example of why that is a potential story or a subject to dig into. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the, just make sure that you everyone cut your sound. All right. So where were we? We were looking at the labor force survey. Okay. So everyone now should have a comma separated value file. Comma separated value is CSV, just stands for a text file, right? And again, what is the difference between a CSV file and an Excel file? This could be a good test question, actually. What is the difference between the two?
The CSV file, showing the quantity, and the Excel file is total.
Absolutely, yeah. The CSV is one sheet, and an Excel workbook is many. So if you open up a CSV file and you start creating additional worksheets where you're doing pivot tables and the cool stuff that we're going to be doing here, and you save it, guess what? It's not going to save any of the additional work that you did. Okay, so that's why you automatically have to save your file from a CSV format to an Excel format, okay, to allow for those additional worksheets. Okay, so this is what we're looking at here. So one of the first things that we want to do with any table that we download, right, is to apply the filter just to see if we got everything, right? So for the date, okay, so do we get all the dates? Well, so we want August 2023 is the most recent date, and we want to compare it perhaps to August 2019. So we can see that those are there. Okay, fantastic. Okay, geography. Unlike the consumer price index, the geography for the labor force survey is just provinces. The territories are not included, just provinces. So that's fine. The labor force characteristics, there are 9 of them. And it was defaulted to the 9 anyway. So they're all here. And everything's here. Okay. And we selected all the age groups, right? So we went beyond 15 and over, which was the default. This was the default. We've selected everything, right? And then your values, these are just the numbers. Okay. So if we wanted to do the same exercise just to get us, just to repeat the exercise and get you used to filtering and sorting, if we wanted to compare the 2 August periods, August 2019 and August 2023, we would deselect and select August 2023, and we would select August 2019, right? And then if we wanted just Canada, we select Canada. And if we wanted the labor force, now we don't want all of these. Which one do we want for now? Which one of these do we want? We want the unemployment rate. Okay. And then we'll take both sexes for now. And then the age group, let's take the default, 15 and over. Right? And then we can sort, the dates are already sorted in descending order. But if they weren't, okay, if they weren't, right? So if you had the most recent, the older date at the top, right? Then we would just sort these by going to the sort and Z to A, right? As highest to lowest or most recent to, and then we would sort. So we can see that the here, and I'm just going to color code this because I like doing that. It makes it easier to see 5.5. And the reason I do this is because you want to make sure that the data you're downloading corresponds to the data on the website. Okay, so if we go back to the data here, and let's just refresh this, right? And we can see that the unemployment rate, the unemployment rate is 5.5. Okay, so 5.5, and here it's 5.5. So we're good. Okay, so we know that we've downloaded all the information that we need to. That's the first step that you do. Make sure that you've got all the data that you need to work with. What do we notice between the numbers, okay, the unemployment rate comparing August 2019 to August 2023? What do we notice? What happened to this number? Did it go up or down? It was 5.8 in August 2019. It was 5.5 in August 2023. It went down. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's fine. And now what if we wanted to say, okay, well, all right, I want to filter it now because I can filter this for different provinces. So what if I wanted to compare Ontario to Canada? What would I do? If I wanted to compare now Ontario to Canada, what would I do? The answer is easier than you think. You know the answer, yeah? Yeah, just select Ontario. There we go. So we can see that in Ontario, and I'll just color code this as well. And I just like doing this because it's an easy way just to see. So in Ontario, it was 5.9. So the unemployment rate in Ontario was slightly higher than the national rate. Okay, so what if we said, okay, that's fine, but what if we wanted to take a look at male and female? Okay, so female. Oops. So 6.2. Right, 6.2 in compared to, so the Canadian unemployment rate for females is 5.4, and in Ontario 6.2. So Ontario is higher than the average. But that's for all age groups. What if we wanted the youngest age group, say 15 to 24? Ooh, look at that. So $11.9. I don't know about you, but that's pretty shocking. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why we download everything and we just filter just to see. We can, now you can just, by eyeballing this, you can just see that there's something going on here. Okay. So, this is fine. We can kind of filter and sort. And, if you wanted to, we could kind of copy and paste these different things into different worksheets and go back and forth. But there's an easier way, and it's called a pivot table. Okay. And the pivot table, you might not, when I show you this, if you still are saying to yourself, I don't get it, don't worry about it. Okay. It just takes a lot of practice. We'll do it again next week. And if anyone is still struggling, then we'll do one-on-one sessions. And it's right. Your inability, your an inability to get your data into a pivot table for your visualization will not be a problem. Okay, so if you don't get it, it takes a while to wrap your head around it. Not a problem. We're here to help. All right. So how do I know that each of these columns here has a filter on it? By looking at this, how do I know? Yeah. All right. So if I wanted to, I could kind of clear that filter. I could clear that filter. Or if you wanted to clear everything, just hit your filter and it gets rid. Okay. So you don't have to, if you want to try to follow along, that's fine. But again, you'll be able to use this as an instructional video. Okay, so you can try to follow along or just watch whatever works for you. So what I want to do is I want to get this into a pivot table that allows me to compare data, right? So if you think of a pivot table, think of does anyone play cards here? Right. So if you what is a deck of cards made up of? Yeah. So you've got what 52 or 53, and then you've got colors, and then you've got what do they call them? Like suits. Okay. So what you could do is you have your deck, but you could subdivide it by color, by suits, and you count them. Right. And you can compare, well, I've got 10 spades compared to 10 hearts. Okay. So that's what a pivot table does. It takes all of that data and it subdivides it. So it might subdivide your dates by you could subdivide your data by dates. You can subdivide it, and then you can subdivide it by gender, and you could subdivide it by jurisdiction, right? So you look at the table, and all of the things that we did, you can do that in one shot, right? So that's essentially what a pivot table does. So to get the pivot table, you click on anywhere inside your table. You go to insert and then pivot table. And I know that most of you have Macs. It basically works the same way on a Mac, right? So you go to pivot table, you will get a dialog box here. And this is very important. So your dialog box basically identifies your table range. So this labor force survey underscore, and then this number right here, what does that is the name of your worksheet. So it names the worksheet and it puts an exclamation point on it. And then it gives you your cell reference. So A1, which is here, all the way down to S88250. So if we scroll all the way down, so that, let me just cancel this, right? So do this again. Okay, so it's copied the whole table. And how do I know that it's copying the table? See these marching ants in the perimeter of the table? It means that it's copied everything. So it's copied from A1, which is here, okay, all the way down to the end, which is S 88,250. Right. Now that is really important because you want to make sure that for your pivot table, you've got all of your data. If there was, I'll just give you an example. One of the things that Excel does is that it stops at blanks, doesn't like blanks. So let's say for the sake of argument that there was nothing in row 18. Then if I did my pivot table, what do you notice? What happens? It stops, okay? Now that's fine. You can say, well, of course I can see that. There are 88,000 records. So what happened if you had a blank row at 60,000, right? You wouldn't see that. And you would say, oh, I've got everything, right? So that's why you have to make sure that take a look at the cell reference and make sure that you've scrolled down, make sure that you've got everything. All right, so do that again. Now it asks you if you want to put this into a new worksheet. Yes. And so what it'll do is it'll put it into a worksheet, but it will be to the left of your table. You can just drag this over. I like to do that because I think, it's easier for me to read from left to right. Okay. So here's your sheet 1, and I'm going to name this pivot table 1. It's a really good idea to name your worksheets, because if you've got a bunch of these, you might want to do a bunch of pivot tables. And if they're just sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, you have no idea what's on them. Okay. None whatsoever, especially if you've come back to the data set 2 or 3 days, you're totally in the dark, right? So here you go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to count, right? So let's go back to our main table here, right? What are the most important fields or columns of information that we're going to use for our analysis? Well, one is going to be date, right? Because we want to compare the unemployment rate for dates. The other is going to be geography, right? Because we'll want to compare maybe Ontario to Canada or Ontario to Quebec or whatever. Another one will be the labor force characteristic, okay? In this case, it will be the unemployment rate. And I'm just highlighting this because I like using highlights because it helps me analyze the data a little bit better. Sex, you probably want to parse it down to male and female, right? So that might be an important one. And then age, really important, right? You're going to want to go beyond 15 and over, and you're going to want to maybe focus on the youngest age group, the youngest category, which is 18 to 24 or 15 to 24. Okay. And what is the actual values are in the value column here. So the unemployment rate, the employment rate, the participation rate, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then I'm going to save that. So why do I do this? Because when I'm on my pivot table, I probably can't remember what these, like what is this or what is this, right? But if I've kind of written it down, I go, okay, so the number is here, the value. So the number you always want to drag into your values section, okay? And then you have your number here. And what I want to do is in Excel, you're always formatting and reformatting, right? So you want to format this. So it's guessed correctly that I want to sum the amounts, but I want to format as a number with 1 decimal place, and I'll use the 1,000 separator. Now, this is an obscenely large number that makes no sense whatsoever. But remember that deck of cards? We have our deck, and then we start then doing our analysis. So we separate by color, and then by sue, and then we can count each one, right? So that's what we're doing here. This is our gigantic deck that's unsorted, right? But now we're going to start to subdivide this. So one of the things that we're going to subdivide first by is geography. So we'll take our geography and we'll into rows. So it takes this number here, and now it's going to subdivide by geography, okay? But again, these are absurdly numbered. These are absurd. What we want to get to is this. We want to get to this number here, the unemployment rate. Those are the numbers we want. Okay, but what's happening is that in the pivot table, it's counting all of these. It's counting labor force, employment, full-time. It's counting all of these. And we want to filter for just unemployment rate. Okay. So, and it's counting all the dates as well. So the first thing that we're going to filter is the date. We're going to drag the reference date into the filter. And we're going to filter it. We're going to select and then deselect. And we're just going to filter it for August 2023. The numbers are starting to come down. What's the next filter we want to do? Labor force characteristic. Right? Now it's counting all of these. Right? So all we want is the unemployment rate.
What happens if they're like pivot table to the right, like looking just
Just click inside. Just click inside and your field list will appear.
oh,
Okay. And so the numbers are coming down, but there's still double counting going on. It's double counting sex, right? So it's giving me both and male and female, right? I just want both for now, right? So it's coming down. An age group, it's counting all the age groups. So I want to pop the age group into the filter. And I want to just select the default, 15 and over. And there I have it. So if I look at Canada, right? There's 5.5 and just save along the way when you do this. And then if I go to my website, there's the 5.5. So I'm good. Okay. So that's fine. Okay. So now this is where the fun begins, right? What if I wanted to compare? You remember when I was on the main table and I wanted to compare, put my filter on, and I wanted to compare the unemployment rate for August 2023 to August 2019. And I just wanted to do it for Canada. And I just wanted to do it for unemployment. And 15 years and over. Oops. There we go. And look how laborious that is, right? But in my pivot table, right, I can see everything at once. I can see not only Canada, but I can see how Canada compares to the jurisdictions. And then, so what I can do is this. I'm going to copy this, and this is what I suggest that you do when you're doing your pivot tables. Just copy this and paste the pivot table right here, right? And now you can take your date. So what if I wanted to subdivide the unemployment rate by date? What if I wanted to compare 2019 to 2023? What do you think I would do with my date? Where would my date go? I drag my date into which of these boxes? What do you think? I drag my date into column. And now I would filter for August 2019. So I've got August 2019 and August 2023. Boom, look at that. Now I can compare, right? So I can see that the rate went down. So I've done the same thing here that I've done here. Okay, I've done the same thing. But what's the advantage of the pivot table? How is this? Because this allows me to compare Canada, right? But it allows me to compare all of the provinces at the same time. So it gives me more information. Okay. And now, so that's fine. Now, what if I wanted to say, okay, well, you know what? I kind of want to see how this behaves for the youngest cohort. I'm just going to copy this. And now I'm going to filter for 15 to 24. Boom, there it is, right? So all of a sudden, the unemployment rate for 15 and over in Canada was 5.5 in August 2023. And for 15 to 24, it was 11.3. Now just do the math in your head. What is the ratio? If you wanted to be very conversational, you would say what? That the unemployment rate for the youngest cohort in August 2023 was what compared to the average? 5.5 and 11.3. Is 11.3 almost double 5.5? So it's about double the rate. Okay. Now, what if we wanted to compare the unemployment rate of people in the 15 to 24 year range to people in the oldest cohort? How would we do that? Any idea? For August 2023. Well, first of all, we're going to copy this. Okay, and we're going to paste it right here. So if we wanted to compare the unemployment rate of two age groups for August 2023, then we would take our date, we'd drag it back into the column, right? And we would just then filter for August 2023. Okay. And we would take our, what do you think now we would take our age group? If we wanted to compare two age groups, what would we do for our, we drag the age group from the filter, we paste it into, what do you think? Drag it and we'll drop it into our columns. And then we will choose 15 to 24 and 15 years and over. See what we've done now? So now what does this allow you to do? So look at the difference now. Now we can compare the youngest workers in Canada. The unemployment rate was 11.3, which we knew up here, but now we can compare it to 55 and over. And what is the difference? More than double. Okay. So what have we been able to do just by copying and pasting and doing the filtering? What have we been able to do in the pivot table that we weren't able to do here? Yeah, do more comparisons, right? More potential story ideas. You can compare age groups. You can compare time periods, right? And so this is what, you know, when you're doing your stories or you're researching your stories, this is the kind of work that you'll be doing. Okay? But you can keep it real simple. If you just wanted to do a story about the unemployment for young people, the youngest age group in Ottawa, right, compared to the average, then you could do that. Or if you want to just to filter, yeah, I mean, you could just do this. So everything that I've done on here, right, if you just do just mimic all of this and say, yeah, I'm going to take one of these. We'll show you how to visualize this next week. But if you want to just to copy this, just to practice, that's fine. But if you want to get a little bit more adventurous in your group and do more things, then that's fine. What else might we be able to do? What do you think? What if we wanted to see how the unemployment rate, create a line graph? I mean, wanted to see how the unemployment rate behaved from August 2019 to August 2023. What do you think that we would have to do? We'd have to create a new pivot table, right? So we'll copy and we'll paste here. But what do you think we might have to do? Okay, let's take our age group. Well, first of all, we'd have to subdivide by dates, right? So let's say we'll take August 2019. We'll take August 2020. We'll take August 2021, August 2022, and August 2023, right? So now we can compare, and we can see that generally speaking, and this is this is multiple age groups, so we want to just filter 15 and over. So unemployment rate for both sexes, 15 and over, subdivided by month, going all the way back to 2019. So if we just take a look at Canada, how has that number behaved? Well, it went up and then down and then down, and then it's going up again, right? So if you were going to express that in a line graph, it would look something like this. Okay, in a line graph, it would look like this. Okay. Now you'll do this in Data Wrapper, but all you have to do is just cut and paste. Believe me, it's really the reason that I like doing like a quick visualization in Excel, which you can do. Okay, you just highlight and then you just select you highlight, go insert, and then you select the visualization you want. Is it allows you just to see what's what. Okay. So for the purposes of our exercises, you don't have to do this. I'm just showing you. You don't have to do this, right? All you need to do is just your pivot tables just to see what story that you want to tell, right? So let's say, for example, that I wanted to do a story about, this is a really good one, right? So unemployment, 15 to 24, 55 and over. We know that it's double in Canada. It's double the rate, okay? So if you're 55 and over, you're more likely to have a job. If you're 15 to 24, and then you can even subdivide this by male and female if you want. But so I would if I was doing this labor force survey, I'd probably just look at this and look at Ontario. Look at Ontario. It's crazy, right? 13.9 compared to 4.2. It's triple. Okay. It's ridiculous, right? So your story is why. It's just a story, right? You talk to someone who's unemployed, you talk to an expert, right? So if there's two of you in the group, one person is responsible for getting a real person. The other person is responsible for getting an expert who can then talk about why this is. Why is it that young people in Ontario are having such a harder time to get work? And that's your story. 600 words, you visualize this, boom, you got it. It's as simple as that, simple storytelling, right? But the key here is that the story is driven by data. The story isn't, obvious, but you still have to find real people. Okay. Just by looking at this alone and the visualization is really not a story. Story is how it's affecting real people. Right? So this is the labor force survey. I'm going to show you one more. So any questions? How many are still kind of trying to wrap their heads around a pivot table? Yeah. It'll take you a while. Like, it's not something you get right away. Believe me, I've been doing this for years and it took me a while. Okay. But the advantage is that you can use this as an instructional video, just follow the steps. And, if you have any problems with the data, just let us know. We hop on Zoom. We'll say, oh, do this, do this, do this. Boom. And then you're to the next step and just visualize it, and then you can go do your story. Right. So don't worry. Your inability to work with the data is not going to stand in the way of you doing a story. Okay. Guaranteed. All right. So I'm going to, if there are no questions about this, I'm going to then do the next one. So for the next one, if we go to the syllabus, this is where it is. So if we scroll back to week 1, right? At the end of week 1, right? Week 1, if you scroll to the bottom, under data, zipped data sets from Ottawa's portal. Okay, so if you haven't already done so, just download this. It's a zip file. Download it to a folder. And it will look like this, right? So this is the zip. Sorry about that. Okay. So if you open your zip folder, open the archive, these are the tables in there. Just export them. Okay. I've got bike thefts and traffic collision. You can look at them if you want, but I would suggest that you want to do the monthly service request, right? So just export them. Under week 1. Yeah, just go at the bottom and under data sets, and there's a zip folder there. Got it? And so this is what you're going to see. Zip folder, open the archive, and you're going to see a number of. And you can see by the extensions, I've already converted the CSV file into an Excel. I've already done that for you. Okay. And then I've created a subfolder for these service requests. Okay. And when you open it, it will look like this. So what is this data set? Has anyone heard of this before? So the actual data set one of the things that I always do in my CSV file is I take the URL for the data set and I'll paste it into the first available cell in the top row. So here it's on the Ottawa open portal. So if I just copy that, go to a browser and paste it in. Okay, and this is where this is the actual data set. Okay, so you open the CSV file, go to column H1, you'll see I pasted in the URL. Just copy that and paste it into a browser, and it'll take you to the table. Or if you wanted to, just go to Ottawa Open Data. Here's the Ottawa Open Data Portal, right? And then if you enter the search term 311, right, there it is, 311 service request volume. Oops. There we go. So 311. So these are all of the 311 service requests. And all I did was I took the most recent one. Okay. So this is on the Open Data Portal. What is a 311? So let's break this down now. So how many of you have ever made a noise complaint? Okay. So what happened? And just turn your camera on, and I'll just stop sharing. And so the folks joining us virtually, and I'm just going to mute myself. Hang on. Okay, go ahead.
Pretty much just for the past 2 years, my roommates have had really annoying roommates who like to party a lot during the week and play really, really loud music until 3 in the morning, and we have really thin walls. So once in a while, I would be designated to make the noise complaint if they wouldn't shut up by like 3 a.m.
So how does that work? Like, who do you call?
I just Googled the bylaw number and then I called them and made a complaint.
Okay, so Rebecca calls the 911 as 311 service. And then, so that dispatch then sends it to the appropriate service. So it would be by law, right? If you had a complaint about garbage, it would go to another section. If you got bitten by a dog, it would go to another section, right? So what happens? So what happens to Rebecca's complaint? It goes to bylaw. Now what happens? It's given an ID number. There's a date. It's written down. It's given a category, right? And then there may or may not. Now, did anyone contact you afterwards to follow up, or?
Yeah, they did. They called me like the next day or a couple days later.
Really? Okay. And did they investigate, or what happened? Okay. All right. So what you don't know is whether or not the situation was resolved, right? But it was a complaint. So all of those complaints are in this data set. Okay. And if we go to, let's say the type, let me see, type, right? And if we go to, let me see, noise, right? Or music, loud music, right? Okay, loud music. Those are all the music complaints. So the reason is noise, the type is music. Yes. Oh my goodness, that is terrible. It's crazy. Sorry, guys. All right. So let me just review this, right? What I did was I just stopped sharing when Rebecca had chatted, right? So we're good up until that point. So what I did was the two key columns are B and C, right? So the reason being noise, okay? But the type is even more granular. So it's similar to if you get age, you get 15 and over, but then you get all the different age categories. And then you get male and female, right? And then you get, so the more granular, the more detailed, the better. So these are all the noise complaints, right? And then if I'm sorting the noise complaints by date, I would just sort all the noise complaints in descending order. Okay.
office.
Yeah.
So of course there's a bunch of noise and people think.
Yeah, yeah.
And they sometimes like, cause we work with the police, and so sometimes they said they told me that sometimes they don't log like the noise complaints. So I was like, the data would be more accurate if they logged. And they show up like hours and hours later. It's so pissed.
Are you logged into Zoom? Okay, so do you want to just, that's an excellent point. And so just turn your camera on and just so that the folks joining us remotely can hear, because that's an excellent point and it dovetails into something I'm going to point out. Okay.
Yeah.
And while we're doing this, just play around with the data, just sort and filter and see what's in there. I'm guessing this will be a popular one. Or she can just do it in your computer, right?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'm just finished.
Okay.
Just putting it through.
Just that otherwise the folks joining us remotely can't hear you.
I can do. Can you see me?
There we go. Yep. Yep. Okay, you were saying?
Yes. So I was saying that I have filed some noise complaints before, and that at my work, that I work at a homeless shelter, and that since I work with police, they have like said to me that they don't file all of their noise complaints sometimes. So the data is a little off, and they do take hours to show up, despite the fact that there is many cars within like that range of like center town. You know what I mean? So it takes them like, it doesn't even matter if you're reporting like, let's say it's more than a noise complaint, like they're being noisy and they're threatening you. They're like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna like stab your whole family, something like really absurd.
Mhm.
Like it will take them a significant time to show up, even if the person at hand can be excessive, violent, noisy, stuff like that. It can take them hours.
Mhm.
And they have even said to other staff, like, oh, sometimes we don't log it, like in the computer. So it goes like, so when they log it, when they show up, they have to admit like, oh, I was here, I came to this location for such and such reasons. So it's like, oh, they actually did go there, you know, so if they mark it where they go. But when they look at their file report at the end of the day, it's not going to show like, oh, they did show up for this call at this time at this place. It's not going to be there.
Okay. So would the initial call go to the police or the city for a noise complaint?
So we would call like there's a specific number because I've gone through 311 so many times at my work.
Mhm.
I really don't find them helpful
Okay.
for many services.
Mhm.
So there's a non-emergency police number,
Okay.
and so they just it's just like when you call normal 911,
Mhm.
and then they ask you like, oh, what do you need? Like, do you need ambulance? Do you need paramedics? Do you need police? So you're like, oh, I need police, and then you state like, oh, like the matter that's happening. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, we have a car around the corner. We have a car like here. They could be attending another call. We're going to send them over. You know what I mean? But on their screen, though, so let's say it's kind of like if you think about it, Uber,
Mhm.
like Uber can accept and disaccept different things. So for them, it's like they get pinged. So they're like, oh, come to this location. This is what's in progress right now. And so they can basically choose when to show up. And that's why they choose to show up like hours after the fact.
Okay. So maybe that's piped through a different dispatch system, right? Like
Yes.
911 and then it just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because they send it through the same system. It's just they're like, oh, they send like there's obviously ones that are priority,
Mhm.
and then ones that are like, okay, like this is what's going on,
Mhm.
but like it's not like someone's bleeding or someone's injured, you know?
Okay. So, that's a good point that Mel makes. And what we have to realize is that when we're citing this data, we have to say according to reported incidents. It's like crime or whatever. It's like according to reported crime statistics or reported complaints, because this is a snapshot of like how many people, like for every person like Rebecca who files a noise complaint, how many don't? Well, I don't know, but I would guess hundreds, right? So it is a snapshot, right? And data is is by its very nature just a snapshot, just a slice of reality, if you will. It's a sample, absolutely. Same with surveys, or same with StatCan. You know, it's a survey based on a certain number, and then they extrapolate that, right? So there are imprecisions baked into all of this stuff. So it's not a definitive picture, but it gives you an idea of what's happening. Okay, so that's a very important point. So, yeah.
Is this spreadsheet only indicating reporting noise complaints to like bylaw, so 2311?
Yes,
So it
yes.
doesn't include all of the 29.
So just unmute yourself. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, what I was just asking is the like the spreadsheet that we have here, does it include um like is it just calls or complaints made to bylaw 311, or does that include noise complaints that were filed to 911 as well?
No, so this is just 311, very important. So this is just the 311 service. So that's why I showed you the website. So it's just all of these, right, calls, and what they do is that they subdivide them by year and by quarter. Okay, so Q1 would be quarter one, 2012, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So it's the 311 service. So that's how it's logged. So again, I circle back to one of my first questions when we were talking about UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and E. coli outbreaks in daycare centers. You know, so when something happens, who collects that data? Where does it get written down? How does it get stored, et cetera? And if you can find that, then you're on your way to doing a potential story. It's stored somewhere, right? Stored in a database, right? Yeah.
And I find data can be so, sometimes when you look at data, it can be so like misleading, because even like when you give you statistics, are like 50% of this, 50% of that. But however, if you look like, if you actually go into like the raw data, they're like, okay, we only surveyed like 1,000 people.
Yep.
So it's only 50% of those like 1,000 people.
Yep.
But they say like 50% of Canadians, and it's like, well, all of Canada didn't take the survey and then
Yep.
split them.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it can seem like it's necessarily more than it is, or like almost represented in a way that embellishes it. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that's especially why I think it's important to include like the pool of people that you surveyed, right? Because it's like, how many of these people, then it would be more accurate to then assess like how many people are struggling with this and that, to then like have a greater picture.
And that is done, right? So if we take a look at political polling, for example, they'll give you the sample size. The larger the sample size, the better, right? So polling on a national level would be more accurate than at a provincial level, or a small provincial level, because you're dealing with very small samples, smaller sample sizes. So a poll would be, and then the dates. When was the poll taken, right? How recently was it taken? So all of that information will be in the methodology, right? So a poll of, say, 4,500 Canadians between this date and that date, and it's accurate 3.1% times 19 times out of 20. So that's the margin of error. So, if the Conservatives, according to the latest Nanos poll, for example, Nanos does the polls for CTV and the Globe, if they're at, say, 36% nationally, right, that could either be 3 percentage points off, right? So it could be either at 38% or 32%. That's the margin of error. So that speaks to your point, is that we have to be very careful of statistics, but all you have to do when you're writing is just describe the data set, right? So it would be, the number of noise complaints has increased in Ottawa, has increased according to an analysis of data that the city uses to track complaints. That's all you need to say, right? Because I know that I've cited the source. Okay. So if we take a look at this, then, so what I've done, right? So you can do the same thing that we did with the labor force survey, right? Is that you can kind of play around with this, and you can filter and whatnot. Okay, so the key columns are the reason. So the reason is, let's take a look at this one. So the reason is animals, right? And then type is a further, is the further precision. It's a lost pet. Okay, so subject is bylaw, right? So animals. So if we take a look at noise, let's go where we were again. Okay, so let's take a look at noise. So the noise would go to bylaw. So Rebecca calls, it goes to bylaw. 311, okay, noise complaint, that goes to bylaw. So the reason is noise. Okay. The type, what type of noise? Is it a dog barking? Is it people fighting? It's music, right? So it goes from subject to reason to type. And here is the date. They don't give you the time of day, which is a real, I don't know why they don't do that. They should, because you're probably, no surprise, a lot of noise complaints would be, late at night or first thing in the morning, right? And then this channel, right? So this is whether it's a voice in or whatever. I think voice in is probably a call. And here we have, this is important, ward. So now you can take the noise complaints and you can subdivide by ward. Which ward had the greatest noise complaint? So let's just do that, right? So let's clear that. And now we're going to create a pivot table. Okay, and again, we have to pay attention to the range, right? So we've got everything. So A1, and it goes all the way down to I, and it includes H because I've got something in here. Okay, I've got the URL, but it goes all the way down to 200,000, over 200,000 records here. Okay, so I've got everything. That's the main thing, and I want to open it in a new worksheet. So I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to move it over here to the right, and I'm going to call it. I've already got a pivot table, but I'm going to call it pivot table 1, right? So let's see which ward had the highest number of noise complaints. So what I'm going to do here is, now this is a little trickier, right? So all I want to do in my pivot table is I want to count the number of rows, right? So each one of these rows is one complaint, right? What the subject, this was the subject, this was the reason, this was the type, this was the date, this is the way it was recorded, and this was the ward. So that's one complaint. So all I want to do in my pivot table is I want to count these, right? So there were over 200,000. So to get the account of that, I'm going to take my subject, right, which is the first column. I'm going to drag it into my column, and I'm just going to do a count. So it just counts the number of records. And I'm going to, so it guesses correctly that I want to count. And I'm always formatting, right? So I want to format it as a number with no decimal places, and I want to use the thousand separator, right? So that number corresponds with that number. Okay, so I know that I've got that many records. Now I need to subdivide that. So how would I subdivide it? Well, again, let's take a look at what are the most important columns here. So it's probably, I would say, the type, right? And probably the ward. And I would say maybe the date, right? Let's look at the dates. Oh, look at this. Okay, so this is just for 2023, right? So look at that. There are over 200,000 complaints, and 2023 isn't over yet. So this is a large, that means that tens of thousands of complaints are made every year. Okay, so this is, I just downloaded it just for 2023. And so it goes from January 1st, 2023 to July the 31st, 2023. So it's just the first 7 months of this year, which is fine. Okay. All right. So what if we wanted to find out the ward that had the highest number of music complaints? Well, I would maybe subdivide by ward, right? And I want to sort this count in descending order, just like we did, right? But this is all the complaints. So if I just wanted music complaints, how would I do that? Let's go music, or the music is in which column? It's in type. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take the type and I want to drag it into the filter. And then you could either do one of two things: select, and then the nice thing about filters is that for text, it lists everything in descending order, in alphabetical order. So you can deselect and you can scroll all the way down for music. Okay. And there it is. Or if you're not sure, you can just go music, just like we did, and there it is. Right? So music, and there you have it. So, which ward had the highest number of music complaints for the first 7 months of 2023? Vanya, any surprise there? Okay. So if you were going to do a story on that, that would be fine. But, I don't know. Now, we're going to get into something else next week, and we're going to figure out the rate. Okay. So it's the raw number. So there could be many reasons. There's a lot more bars and restaurants in Rideau Vanier. Rideau Vanier is one of the largest wards. More people live there. So if you have more people live there and you have more bars and restaurants, guess what? You're going to get more noise, right? But does it mean that it's any noisier? Well, probably. Okay. But does it mean that the problem is, well, I don't, it's just a function of it just being the largest and busiest ward. So is that a story? Yeah, maybe the story is maybe one of the other quieter wards that has, right? Or maybe you want to look at the top 10, the top 10 wards with the highest number of noise complaints and see, right? Or maybe you wanted to take type, right? Dump it into columns. Okay, so let's just copy this, right? So we'll copy this. And let's just paste it right here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take type, drag it into columns, and we're going to compare, say, music to what? What do we want to compare music to? Let's say dog bites. Dog bites. Dog barking. There we go. Dog barking. How's that? Dog. But dog barking. Well, but barking, right? Like noise kind of complaints, right? Dog barking. Okay, so here we have it. All right. So now if we want to sort the dog barking column, we'll sort the dog barking column in descending order. College ward had the highest number of dog barking complaints, right? But what this allows you to do now, we can compare the different kinds of noise, right? Dog barking, music. Or you could do this. You can say, okay, well, you know what? I'm really interested. And let me go back to the main table. And so I'm gonna clear this filter. And then you can, but now I want all the noise complaints. So look at all the noise complaints, right? All the different noise complaints. And so I'm thinking, yeah, I want to find out what's the most common noise complaint. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my table. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to take type. I'm going to dump it into my filter. Whoop, not type, but reason, right? Reason, dump it into my filter. And the reason will be noise. Okay, so I'll take type out. So these are all the noise complaints. And I'm going to sort this in descending order, right? So Rito Vanier, in the first 7 months of 2023, had 910 noise complaints. How would I subdivide that by different kinds of noises now? I would take my type and I would put it into my column, right? And then I would just, so look what it's done. It's taken noise complaints and it subdivided them into the kinds of complaints. Now, this is a large, table here. So I'm just gonna close that right here. And I'm gonna sort, yeah, so that's sorted in descending order, right? So if we look at Rito Vanier, for example, okay, so music, it seems as though music was the highest number, but shouting, okay, info noise, construction, car alarms. Interesting, right? So you could do a story just on all the different kinds of noise complaints, right? In say one ward. Right. The nice thing about data is that it's like the sky's the limit. There's no shortage of things that you can do. Okay. So I've taken the liberty of cleaning up this database. So it's ready for you to use. So what I would suggest is that you spend the time just reviewing the pivot table stuff, okay? Because we're going to be tested on that next week. And I also want you to think about the topic that you want. So do you want consumer price index? Do you want labor force survey unemployment? Or do you want 311? And also I need you to form groups. Okay. So again, if you're going to be using one of these data sets, you don't have to run your idea bias. If you're going to be using another data set, and I would advise against it. These are 3 really good data sets, right? Use one of these. It just makes your life a lot easier. Okay. Then you don't have to run your story bias. Okay. So what we will do next week is that you will have formed your groups. Now there is one group that's going to have 3, I think, right? How am I my numbers? $15, right? So 7 groups. And the one group's going to have 3. Can I leave that to you folks to sort out, or we don't need to do that now, do we? Yes, no? Do you want to do that now? Do you want to do your, give me a show of hands. Who wants to do it now? Okay, who would rather do it on your own? Just you guys sort it out. Okay, I think the majority rules. All right, so next week, you'll tell me what your groups are, okay? Okay, just let me take a straw poll here. Who's thinking of maybe the 311 data? I figured you'd say yes. Who's thinking of the unemployment data? Who's thinking of the consumer price index? Yeah, that's what I figured. So it'll probably come down to, you know, either the inflation stuff or the complaints, and that's fine. Okay. So what you need to do is once you've formed your groups, start thinking about the stories, and so you'll need a real person who you can build the narrative around, and you will need some sort of expert who can talk about, like, why are there so many noise complaints in Vanier, or why is music the most common? Well, you need and who might that person be? I don't know. But I would suggest that a really good person to talk to would be the counselor for that ward. Right? And what kinds of, that might be a place to start. Right? So, the reporting arm of that, well, you folks are learning how to, you've been at this now for 3 years. So I think you've learned a thing or two about finding sources for stories, right? But if you're, anyone is struggling, just let us know. Okay. Yeah, so that's essentially it. Does anyone have any other questions? Yes.
How many sources should, and do we need these estimates?
How many sources?
And do we include data?
I would say that you need to I'm always reluctant to give a number on sources, right? Because if I say 2 sources, then the temptation is we'll just do 2, right? If I say 1, just do 2, just do 1. I would say that you need at least 2 sources, right? You need a real person, someone around whom you build a narrative, and you need a source who can put the numbers into context. Right? So I would say at least 2. So if there's two people in the group, one finds the real person and one finds the expert.
Okay, so is our like third source that's kind of like behind the, would you count like these statistics as a source or just a supporting factor?
I would, so that's a good question. Would I count these statistics as the source? These statistics are a source, yes, and the actual visualization is a separate mark from the story. Okay, so yeah. So that's it. But I mean, if you find more people, but I mean, it's like a 600-word story that you're going to upload to Capital Current. So, you don't want to be talking to too many people. Or, I mean, you know how it goes, right? You end up, like any good reporter will end up talking to more people than they need to, right? Because that allows you to take the best material, right? What you want to avoid is what a very knowledgeable trainer, Don Gibb, who used to do a lot of training with the Globe and Mail, called the warm body syndrome, right? Warm body syndrome means that the first person with a pulse who talks to you is in your story. You don't want to do that, right? And I like to use the analogy of a casting call. When you are auditioning actors for a part, right? Would a director or a producer take the first person who auditions? Of course not, right? You would go through maybe hundreds and you take the best one. The first person who talks to us. Well, there's many reasons. It could be that you've got a crushing deadline. It could be that you're trying to juggle this with too many other courses. It could be that you haven't given yourself enough time, which I think is probably the most common reason, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm running out of time. Let me find a friend of a friend. Okay. that might work for this assignment, but it's really not a great workflow if you want to work in this business, right? Like from now, you know that you got a story due in a couple of weeks. So you gotta think about your data set. You've got to get your group. Once you get your group, okay, now we got to find people. And that exercise should start now or right after this class or as soon after this class as possible. Yeah. It's on the syllabus. I don't have it, but we will be the fourth week, which will be the week after next. We will be uploading the stories to the CMS. Yeah. Sorry? Yes. Yeah. There is a rubric. But if you have any questions about the assignment, just ask. Okay. But essentially, you're just telling a story. You've already got the data. So that's easy, right? That's almost half the mark right there. Right? You just gotta, and if you're, you're worried about the visualization, then we can go over that in class. So your main goal is just to figure out what data set that you want to use and find a story. Okay. So for next week, your assignment will be if you haven't done so, how many of you have used Data Wrapper? Download it. I've also uploaded a short YouTube video that an Iron did last year that works better than anything I could have done. So you can review that, but we'll review it in class as well. And if you really get stuck, then we can actually do the visualizations in the fourth week, right? Because the fourth week is just going to be very little of me doing this, right? And by then you'll have your stories. We'll get the stories into the CMS. We'll get your visualization. We'll do everything within the 3 hours, right? So don't panic if there are, like, if I don't have my visual, that we can do, because in Data Wrapper, literally it takes 15 minutes, literally. Okay. So to repeat, the main thing is who are the people, what's your story, what data set, who are the people who are going to be in your story. That's the real key. All right. Any other questions? Okay, that's it. We're done. See you next week.